The year is 1861. A businessman operating in the small market town of Marlborough, North East Wiltshire, is about to change the face of the landscape in this area forever. He walked away from that meeting with some Great Western Railway executives with a significant smile on his face. He'd achieved everything he set out to achieve in that meeting. We don't know who he was, and we probably never will, but we do know that meeting took place. And as a result of that meeting, everything I'm about to describe to you today in this video was shaped by its outcome. Railway mania had gripped the country for the last 20 years. It was still a new concept, and it was still changing the lives of every village, town and city lucky enough to be graced with the Iron Road. Those early railways were shaping up in some significant part to give us the broad identity of the shape of the railway map as it remains today. But there was one missing link, one link that many saw as not only a vital connection in an area that really needed it, but also one that wouldn't fail to make its shareholders money. Welcome to the story of the race for the North-South Railway. I forgot what I was going to say. So back here in Marlborough, it lies in a valley, an east-west route, which perhaps predates Roman times, and then it became a Roman road, and then thereafter it was the King Street mentioned in 1228, and then carried on being a very popular route. I think even in the early 1600s it was supposed to be one of the first, or one of 6 postal routes, perhaps connecting London to Bristol in this area. Now, because we're sat in this valley, the geography to the north and the south, well, that's completely different. So you can imagine this businessman's excitement when all of a sudden he realised that there was going to be an extension to the GWR railway from Hungerford through here. You can also imagine his frustration when he learnt that it was actually going to be about 5 miles to the south of here, the other side of Savernake Forest. So I should be looking for 2 bridges here that cross the road. I'll come to the reasons why later. Now, despite the success of this meeting with GWR, well, the businessman was probably unaware of the bigger picture. He was just wanting his pot of gold that was the railway network and its connection to Marlborough. GWR themselves, however, perhaps they have an eye further south. They've just lost the battle with London South Western Railway for the Andover to Southampton connection, the Strutt and Winkle line. So now they agree to the whim of our Mr. Marlborough, the businessman, and they build a 5.5 mile branch line around Savernake to Marlborough. So let's talk about a railway company that are yet to exist and won't exist for another 20 years. And yet they are the first railway company to enter this race, even though they don't exist. The race to connect the industrial north to the ports on the south. Now, in GWR building this very branch line for that businessman, well, that railway company that don't yet exist have just completed 8% of that railway. Confused? Well, you may well be, because there's another railway right next to us, built by a different company, but we'll come to that later because that's spoilers. For the meantime, let's enjoy this 1860s GWR branch line. The branch line there, the GWR branch line, served its purpose for a number of years, but the locals and the towns here wanted more, and they were to receive that because July the 21st, 1873, the Swindon, Marlborough and Andover Railway gained royal assent. Game on. Now, 1873 would be a crucial year for this north-south battle, because within a month of the Swindon to Andover line being authorised, another line is too authorised just a few miles to its east. August the 5th, 1873, and the Didcot, Newbury and Southampton Railway is now in play. The original route was planned at 34 miles because it was going to join Micheldever on London South Western Railway's main line, but the ultimate length would then want to be 55 miles all the way in its own steam down to Southampton. This really is the starting gun for both railway companies, and perhaps the Swindon and Andover line, well, they were first out of the blocks, but no sooner after the first railway embankment and cutting were laid, well, they've hit a problem at Swindon. You see, the original route planned here was to head under a tunnel under Swindon Old Town. Despite extreme objection from the town's residents, construction of the tunnel started. Now, with the tunnel here being the most significant obstacle on the line, completing it would give a massive advantage over the nearby competition, who themselves were already significantly strapped for cash and yet to lift a shovel. Disaster was just around the corner for the Swindon Andover line, because no matter how much they dug this tunnel on the south side of Swindon under Swindon town, the old town, well, collapse after collapse after collapse, the geology just wasn't taking it. Now, both the Swindon and Andover Railway and the Didcot, Newbury and Southampton Railway would fail to do anything for the next 5 years because they were both cash strapped. The race here that promised so much was now delivering very little. 1878 turned out to be the year which would see the fortunes of the Didcot, Newbury, Southampton Railway turn around, but from quite the odd source. Lord Carnarvon gave support and helped push through the line. Such was the confidence that when it was authorised in 1880, well, the first sod had already been cut a year ago. Progress had been made. Meanwhile, over on the Swindon Andover line, well, things were back on track. Things were starting to move forwards. July 1881. And the Swindon to Marlborough section is now open. We have 20 miles of their line open, despite the fact we haven't got the full name of the railway yet. Now, this seemingly wakes up GWR almost overnight. They become really hostile, and they're going to cause problems, which we're going to come to very shortly for this line. Because don't forget, we're still using this line right here, the GWR original branch, to get around Savernake and the Marlborough area. To add further worry, the Didcot, Newbury and Southampton Railway is now flying. The entire section between Didcot and Newbury is now open by 1882. Now, the Andover to Grafton section, the southern bit of this line, is taking shape and it's looking good, but we still have the problem, this problem. GWR line, well, it's steep, it's not in great condition, and despite the fact that GWR will be forced one day soon to improve it, well, it's still a problem because it's still not the complete through route for the Midlands South Western Junction Railway, because when they get to here, they're in the hands of the GWR signalmen, who are deliberately blocking trains and holding that line up. Not an ideal situation. Now, London South Western Railway, well, they're sat watching all of this happen, and they're about to undertake one of the bizarrest moves in railway history. Well, they were to build a double-track branch line from Fullerton up to Hurstbourne and offer it to the Didcot, Newbury and Southampton Railway in 1884. You see, the Didcot, Newbury and Southampton Railway are now 1 year from reaching Winchester. London and South Western Railway are in fear of Great Western Railway's influence over this eastern line, and they offer them a free route to Southampton. Don't build your own line, use this one we've just built for you. Bizarrely, they refused, and that branch line was built pretty much for no reason. So let's get back on track. By this point, we have the Midlands and South Western Junction Railway finally named the Midlands and South Western Junction Railway, and they have reached Cirencester, but severely lacking in funds to push further north. Meanwhile, the Didcot, Newbury and Southampton Railway are pushing forwards and have now reached Winchester, the station at Winchester Chisel, and whilst many townsfolk don't even know of its existence, well, there is hope. We are only maybe 8 or so miles from Southampton. In fact, an embankment in Southampton has already been built perpendicular to Southampton Central Station. Almost immediately though, we have a problem. The Didcot, Newbury and Southampton Railway are stuck for funds. Perhaps that tunnel just north of Chisel, or maybe that dug deep into their pockets. Now the final chapter in this story is quite a fascinating one, because we now have both lines almost reaching both of their intended destinations. Now, join me as I head just down the side of the Kennet and Avon Canal. We can look at two things that will help describe this final chapter really well. The Didcot, Newbury and Southampton Railway have pretty much stopped by this point, and the contractor on the Midlands and South Western Junction Railway have gone bankrupt. A few years on though, and work progresses, albeit very slowly. But 1891 and the Midlands and South Western Junction Railway finally reached Cheltenham, and all of a sudden they now have running powers from there all the way down to the south to Southampton. Now you'd think that would be mission complete. They've 100% of their line done, goal achieved, but between them and London South Western Railway, who've been carefully watching on, well, they wanted more. They wanted to finish this race in style. London South Western Railway loaned the company a man called Sam Fay to make some changes, and he really does that. Starts by clearing out the management, and secondly, perhaps more importantly, he turns his attention to this. This is the Marlborough problem, because right here we still have a shared section of line. The railway came over here onto the GWR line behind us, and that's where it was shared for a few miles up and around the branch back into Marlborough. Now, for a railway company to be taken seriously, it needs its own running powers on its own line. But you can't just build a railway, you need to think a little bit outside the box. In steps Lord Henry Brunel Bruce, the 5th Marquis of Ailesbury and a significant landowner in this area. Somehow the genius that is Sam Fay managed to get our Lord on board, perhaps by offering his own box at Savernake High railway station. A railway would now be plain sailing. In fact, pick your own route through my land, Mr. Fay. So he did just that. Sam Fay had this new structure here built, which would take the line straight over the top of the GWR line just beyond it and on up into Savernake. You can see the structure there, and of course behind us here you can see this part of it too. Still stands here next to its older counterpart, and the masonry just there. It would then run parallel along the GWR line into a new tunnel and then on into Marlborough, the perfect end to a rather fitting railway. The icing was now on the cake. We're in this random nature reserve, and right behind me you've got the embankment for the Midlands and South Western Junction Railway, and if I just go down these steps down the embankment, well, I can show you obviously the original GWR line that ran parallel. So here it is now. This is the GWR line. Over there in the distance you've got the London South Western Railway, or the Midlands and South Western Junction Railway. So two routes going in the same direction, and there's a really good old shot of the two bridges crossing the main road. So when you go up the main road into Savernake, you can see these two railways going parallel side by side in such a weird way that underlines the randomness of railway mania and railway development. You have two competing railways next to each other. Competing is probably the wrong word in this sense, but you get the idea. the story of this junction here and the story of the railway, the Midlands and South Western Junction Railway, leaves me feeling a bit nostalgic about a railway I never lived in, but I do feel that there's a sort of a rose-tinted glasses aspect about me of how beautiful and romantic this line would be. Although I think it would be rather useful as a north-south link right now, something that's not London-centric, but we'll probably never see, certainly in my lifetime. I've been Paul, I hope you've enjoyed the production. A lot of behind the scenes and extras you can get on the Patreon in the link below, and of course the YouTube members. We'll see you in the next video.